Steve Discher, and I'm from College Station, Texas. I've been MikroTik training since 2008 and teach RouterOS classes. My websites are learnmikrotik.com, ISP Supplies, and I have a blog site that you'll find under my name as well. I also have a site that I started a number of years ago called mikrotikconfig.com, and that was a reaction to a lot of people calling and asking for the same things over and over again. Can you give me a firewall script, a QoS script? I want to do load balancing, that type of thing. So we created this website, and there you can go and fill out a very simple form and download a configuration, load it into your router, and you'll be up and going with one of these very common configurations. And I also have a couple books, RouterOS by Example, first and second edition, you can get from ISP Supplies as well as Amazon. And I'm working on my next book this summer, so we'll see how that comes out. Top secret. All right, thanks to Ty Bermia. Ty, are you here? All right, well, thanks anyway. I got really rushed to get a presentation together last week and had this class that I taught this week. And I reached out to Ty, and he did all the screenshots for me. So thanks a lot, Ty. I appreciate you. So I've been here since Sunday of this week. I came in on Sunday, and then Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, I did the MikroTik MTCNA class here at the hotel. And if you don't remember, Monday was April 1st, or April Fool's Day. So I just couldn't resist, and so this is how I started my class. I came in very stoic and put the first slide on and said, okay, guys, good morning. Well, if you're asking yourself already, you know, do I need to know math for this class? I'm sorry, but you are going to have to, I was much better on Monday, but you are going to have some advanced math for this class in order to pass the certification exam. So everybody get out a piece of paper. I want you to copy down this formula. You've got to commit it to memory or you're not going to pass the test on Wednesday. All right, so it was funny. So I do want to say congratulations, 24 students that we had in class. And so we've got some new MikroTik engineers out there. Watch out. So. All right, so as I was preparing today, every year when I prepare my MUM presentation, I always label it, you know, 2008 MUM presentation, 2009, so on. So I opened up that folder to create this one, and I started kind of reminiscing over the years, the different MUMs we've had here in the U.S., and I realized we've had, counting this one, 13. So 07 was Orlando. Did anybody go to Orlando? Oh, this is going to be fun. All right, Dennis was there. 2008 was Chicago. Then we went to Dallas, then Phoenix, then Las Vegas, New Orleans. A lot of people don't remember New Orleans. 2013 was St. Louis. 2014, Pittsburgh. 2015, Miami, Dallas, Denver, Baltimore, and now Austin. So 13 different MUMs. So I just want to play a quick little game, and then we'll get started with the presentation. How many of you have attended all 13 of those MUMs? Oh, this is going to be easier than I thought. All right. How many people have attended 12 MUMs? All right. That's going to make it tough. All right, here's what we got to do. We got 2 prizes. So, Fred, can you catch? And somebody tossed this back to Mr. Wilson. Oh, hey. You could have seen the look on Brian's face. Pass that back to Mr. Wilson back there. All right. So congratulations, guys. Glad you're here. So. All right. So having a ticketing system at ISP Supplies, we answer a lot of support requests for free. And it seems to me kind of like the MikroTik configurator I was telling you about before. We get the same questions over and over and over again. So I was starting to ask myself, what could I do today that would help the largest number of people as far as MikroTik HowTos? And so, of course, like I do anytime I want to diagnose my health or whatever it is, I went to Dr. Google and I said, what are the top 10 Google keyword searches that involve the terms MikroTik HowTo? And so I went to Blake, my web guy, and I said, hey, use your fancy little SEO tool there and tell me what the top 10 searches are based on volume for MikroTik HowTo. And so here they are. Number 1, MikroTik HowTo port forward. How to do a backup config. Install a package. Export a config. How to reset, block YouTube, upgrade, block MAC addresses, upgrade firmware, and how to set up a wireless bridge. And this is the order of volume for those searches. So what I want to do today is I want to keep it light. Your brain is safe. I'm not going to explode your mind. I'm going to save that for Greg Soul, Kevin Myers, Thomas Kernack, the Brothers Wisp, and many more that will come in here and just lay some material on you that's going to make your mind explode, kaboom. So we're going to keep it pretty light, but I think it'll be beneficial as we walk through how do you do each one of these setups. And so I've broken them down into small pieces. I've used Winbox. It should be pretty easy for you to follow. Now, if you're an old pro and you know more about this than I do, and there's probably a bunch of you out there, you might be bored, but we'll just wait and let those other guys explode your mind. So first of all, how do you port forward, and why would you want to do it? So we hear this term port forward. Really what they're talking about is doing a destination NAT, taking the destination IP address of a packet and changing it out to another IP. And this is what we typically do when we're trying to give access to a server that we have on a private network from the outside world. Maybe you've got a DVR or some kind of IP camera or something that you want to give access to from the public internet. So you're going to use a destination NAT. The setup is pretty simple. You're going to start with IP firewall. You're going to go to the NAT tab, click the plus sign, and create a new NAT rule. In this case, we're using the destination NAT chain because that's the only one that will work. And the protocol we're selecting is TCP. The destination port is 80, so this is HTTP traffic. And now there's a lot of different ways to do this and a lot of different opinions, but this is the one I like the best. In this case, for the N interface, I picked my WAN interface, assuming that's Ethernet 1. Now we have to narrow it down just a little bit more using this tab called the Extra tab. And there you can expand the section that says Destination Address Type, set the address type to local, which is any IP that is bound to the router. So this works better when you have a dynamic IP on your public interface that may be changing. So if you write the rule very specifically and you say any traffic destination NAT, this protocol, this port, going to this destination address is typically being your public IP. That won't work when your IP changes. So use the Extra tab and the address type local. And then finally, the action is going to be DST NAT to the private address of the server that's on your local area network. So pretty simple. Now, I mentioned dynamic address. There's a feature that came out, I don't know, 2 years ago maybe, but I find it really handy, and it's called IP Cloud. So if you have a site that you want access to from the internet and it has a dynamic IP, it's actually really simple to do now. It used to be that you had to use a dynamic DNS script and some kind of a dynamic DNS site, and the scripts would break with different versions, and sometimes it would work, sometimes it didn't. But IP Cloud fixes all that. All you do is select IP Cloud and enable dynamic DNS. Once you hit apply, it's going to look up your public address, and it's going to create a DNS name for you that will be available from the internet. And that name is the serial number of your board .sn.mynetname.net. So anytime your public IP changes, it will update, and you'll be able to get to your device without any interruption. Now, I don't have a great memory, so trying to remember that serial number and all of that, I can't really remember it. So what I do is I control my own DNS, and I use a CNAME. A CNAME is basically a DNS name that stands for another DNS name. So I could simply publish something in my personal domain like home.dischers.com, which points to this long name. And from that point forward, anytime I go to that DNS name, home.dischers.com, I'm going to get this particular board. So that's a really good trick that I happen to like a lot. All right, the number 2 most requested feature, how do I do a backup of my config? So there's really 2 ways to do this. One I like to call a snapshot. I know that's not the name it says in the wiki, but that's what makes sense to me. So a snapshot is basically a picture of my router that I can take right now. I can freeze time, I can make changes to the router, and if things, well, don't go well, I can restore that point in time, and everything will be exactly the way it was when I started. If I want to clone one router, that is take one router and clone it to another device, there's a little bit different function that I'd recommend. And we can either do a partial or a full clone, which is actually called an export. Making backups and storing them on your router is not a backup strategy, so I will warn you against that. Someone could steal it, lightning could strike it, you could have a power surge, or it could just decide to stop working and then you lose those backups. So when you make a backup, drag it to your desktop, put it in Dropbox, I don't care, just get it off that router so it's accessible later. So the first option I'll show you is the system backup. And this is a built-in function in RouterOS, and this is allowing you to make a snapshot in time. To do that, you're going to click the Files button and the Backup button. Now, it will pick a default name for you for that backup, which you can accept, or you can name the backup the way you want. You can have encryption, don't encrypt, put a password on it, all kinds of things. But pretty simple procedure. You hit Backup, and the backup file will be created in the Files list. At that point, you can download it and save it somewhere safe. This is the best way to save the state of your router at a point in time, like just before you make a major configuration change. So it's 2 o'clock in the morning, you're in the maintenance window, you make a backup, you make your change, you lock yourself out, you drive to the tower site, you restore the backup, and everything's back up and going again. Really smooth, right? All right, no, hopefully you were in safe mode or something before you did all that. Again, this is not a good way to clone one device to another. Sometimes the restore may not be to the same hardware platform, can cause issues, overwrite MAC addresses, that kind of thing. So what you want to do is option 2 if you're trying to clone a device. And I typically do both. My backup process is to make an export and one of those snapshots, keep them both, and then I have some flexibility. To make the export, there is no Winbox function for that. It has to be done from the terminal. So you got to put your big boy pants on and open up a terminal and type this command. It's export space file equals and then name it whatever you want. In this case, we named it today. And you'll hit the enter key. Depending on the size of the router, it may crunch on that for 15 seconds or 15 minutes. No, not that long, but for a little while. And then it will produce a file in your files list. Same thing, you download that file and you save it, and now you can either restore all of it or part of it. The restoration process is basically the opposite of the creation process. From the command line, you'll type import and whatever the file name is. Okay? What does a file look like inside? It looks like this, basically just the commands that are used to create that configuration in the first place. Number 4, fourth most popular search, how to install a package. Normally, we don't have to install packages. The packages that are there are sufficient for most of the things that we do, but sometimes there's a feature that we want that's not available. One of those is the GPS function or the CALIA package. How about the NTP server function? That's a separate package. So that's something that you'll have to install. All functions in RouterOS are controlled by packages, and if you're missing some functionality like wireless, well, maybe you're missing that package. To add a package, we're going to go first to System Packages, and that will show us all the packages that are installed. Each package controls some function of RouterOS, and they're fairly descriptive about what they control. If you want to add an optional package, you'll do it from the MikroTik webpage, click the software link, and then go down and find the architecture of the board that you're working on. Sometimes that takes a little time. You have to look through a lot of things in very small type, but you'll find it there. You're going to pick the particular version that you want to download, either the long-term or the stable version, and then you click the download to download the extra packages. Now, it will come out as a zip file, and you have to expand that zip file and then take one package out of there and drag it into your router. If you try and, for instance, on Windows, open the zip file without expanding it and then try and drag out of the zip file, it won't work. You have to actually expand the file. Once you've gotten that file and you've expanded the zip and found what you wanted, you drag it into your files window. Or somebody showed me yesterday, you don't even have to have the files window open. If you just drag into that gray space in Winbox without any windows open, it will put it in the files list. I just learned that for the first time. Another trick that I learned a while back, but if you've got 100 windows open in Winbox and you want to close them all, just hold down the escape key and they'll all shut, except the terminal, that won't shut. All right, so now I've dragged that package. It's the GPS package in this case. I put it in my files list, and now I have to reboot the router And once the router boots back up, I'll see the GPS package is installed, and I'll have the additional functionality of the GPS button here. Okay? This is not GPS sync for wireless, so don't get excited that there's a new feature that you forgot about. But I still ask for that, and I'll ask for it again today. All right. Number 5 in popularity, how to reset your router. Resetting lets you start over. So especially if you're new to RouterOS and you've gotten into the wireless interface and you found that MikroTik exposes to you every possible setting that that card can do, even those that will make your links work worse, then this might be a good time to start over. And resetting will let you do that. Those of you that know what I'm talking about got a giggle out of that. You can also create the original configuration that the device had when it came from the factory, which includes possibly firewall rules, IP addresses, DHCP servers, and all the things that you need to have a working router. And you can set it back to that point simply by using the reset configuration function. To reset your router, if you're logged into it, you can click System, Reset Configuration, and now you have some choices here. You can either just reset, which will give you the factory default, or you can go to no default configuration. You can also tell it don't make a snapshot backup before you reset. And then here's one I find especially helpful, is run after reset. This is where you can specify a script file that you've uploaded to your router. So for instance, I might do an export, drag that export file into a router, then do a reset configuration with no default, and then after reset, run that script, whatever it was. That will clear out the router, load the export, and then you'll have that configuration, and that works really well. Then you reboot the router, and it will be reset. All right, this next one's a little bit more controversial because, as in most things in RouterOS, there's always 10 to 12 different ways to do it, some of which are great, some are okay, and some are not so good. But how do you block YouTube? Well, first question I was asked is, why do you want to block YouTube? But if you want to block YouTube, you can, but some sites and protocols can be blocked with reasonable effectiveness, and others not so much. There's 2 strategies I'm going to show you here today, and there's 2 because to me these typically seem to be the most reliable and the most expandable. So, you know, you can take one and not just block YouTube, but block Facebook too, or some other time-wasting site. Option 1 is using a layer 7 rule or a layer 7 matcher. I do caution you to be cautious with this because it's very processor intensive to do that type of inspection of packets. And so too many of these rules and you'll drag that cloud core down to its knees. So be careful with this. To do this, you'll go to IP Firewall, and there's a tab called Layer 7 Protocols. There's nothing in there because you have to create them. So you'll click the plus sign, and you'll create a new Layer 7 matcher. And you can name it whatever you want. In this case, we're doing this. We're taking a shot at YouTube here. This is a regex expression that will help you identify YouTube in the URL. There's thousands of these posted on the internet for different sites. If you're not a programmer and you don't know the syntax, you can just simply find one and use it. This one works for YouTube. Once you've created the Layer 7 matcher, it'll be in the window for you to use, and now you can apply it to a rule. In this case, we're not going to manipulate YouTube by speeding it up, slowing it down. We're just going to drop it so people think it's broken. So we create a new filter rule. We're going to put this in the forward chain. If you remember, the forward chain is all traffic with a destination IP address that is not local to the router. So basically traffic we're forwarding from interface to interface. We're going to drill down a little bit and look at TCP traffic on 80 and 443. So that would be HTTP, HTTPS. On the Advanced tab, we're going to select the Layer 7 protocol that we just created previously. And on the Action tab, we will either reject or drop. Now, a lot of people put drop here. I like reject better. Reject works faster in most cases. So rather than just waiting and waiting and waiting for a page that's not going to load, it almost immediately says, can't reach that page. Okay? And it does that because reject sends an ICMP network unreachable message back to the client. As long as the client knows what to do with that, then it'll react faster. And this is what people will get. The site can't be reached. The second option is to simply try and block the DNS request. So to do this, you're going to go into your DHCP server and make sure that you're using yourself, that is your router, as the DNS server for your clients. And of course, there's some ways around that I'll talk about in a minute. Then you go into IP DNS and make sure that you have Allow Remote Requests turned on. If you're not familiar with that feature, that allows your router to be a caching DNS server. So it's going to go to an authoritative server, get the DNS resolution, store it locally, and then serve it up to clients when they ask for it. What does that do? Well, it speeds up the operation of the network, but it also allows you to do number 4 here, and that is create static DNS entries that will override the actual DNS entries. So now when somebody asks for the IP address for YouTube, we're going to give them our own IP address that we have concocted in this static. Now, it's a great big red window here. You must have a firewall on your WAN port. Okay, if you don't do that, you are going to be someone's enemy and your own enemy, because you're going to get to be a part of an attack. It's a DNS amplification attack where they will use your router to attack other people. And what that does to you is saturates your internet connection and things stop working. I can't tell you how many calls and tickets we've had from people who thought they were having denial of service attack, when in reality they just had Allow Remote Requests turned on and they had no firewall on their WAN port. So be cautious of that. If you don't know how to make a firewall, mikrotikconfig.com will help you. All right, the next step is we're going to create some static entries for YouTube, and we try and think of all the iterations that people might get, like www, the naked domain YouTube, and so on. And we're going to point them to some other address. In this case, we just pointed them to the local host address, 127.0.0.1, which doesn't have YouTube on it, right? So once again, they're going to get that page that it timed out. You can also use regex here as well, but I don't speak that language, so I didn't do that. All right, once you've created some static DNS entries, now you're going to see your DNS cache on your router begin populating with your bogus information you created. And in this case, YouTube is at 127.0.0.1. And this is the page that they'll get again. Now, if your users are even a little bit smart, they'll just bypass you as their DNS server and put in 8888 or 4.2.2.2 or something like that. In that case, you've got to have one more tool, and that is DNS Proxy. So you'll want to create a destination NAT rule for port 53, not port 52. Hey, it was late last night. Okay, DNS is on, I hate it. A lawyer told me one time, never do a courtroom demonstration. I think it was O.J. Simpson's lawyer. Okay, so you'll want to do a destination NAT rule for port 53 for TCP and UDP with a redirect action. So regardless of what they set as their DNS server, you're going to capture that DNS request and answer them. Okay, now I know the smart guys in the room are saying, well, why don't you just use the TLS Host Matcher they told us about last year? Well, that is a really cool feature. Unfortunately, it came out about a year ago, and of course, Google, being innovative like they are, they have begun implementing something called Quick UDP Internet Connections, and it's present in Chrome. And basically what it does is use UDP in order to accelerate your web browsing session. The problem is that the TLS host command does not see that traffic. So until there's a way to figure that out and match that traffic, the TLS host can be kind of hit or miss. And I applaud Ty for finding that out for me as well. All right, we're almost through the list now. The 7th most popular thing, how to upgrade RouterOS. Keeping your device current is a great idea, especially if you don't want to get hacked. I'll let that sink in a little while. For those of you that got hacked here a year ago, you know what I'm talking about. To upgrade your system packages, and they've made it super easy for you now. You don't have to download it and drag it into the files list anymore. All you have to do now is check for updates. If there's an update, it will tell you about that release, as well as all the information about the release. Makes it super simple to do. You can also pick which development path you want to choose from, or which channel. It'll tell you the installed version, the latest version, and so on. If there is an update available, you'll get 2 more buttons. You'll get a download button and a download and install. If you click download and install, it will download the package and it will take care of the reboot as well. If you select a different channel for which there's an update, then the message changes just a little bit. New version available. And now you see the download and install buttons. The development channels have been changed slightly. They have different names now. They are long-term, stable, and beta. So which one do you choose? Well, it's entirely up to you. If you want the absolutely most stable version without the new features, then that's going to be long-term. If you want the stablest version that has the newest features, then that's going to be the stable track. And the file will download and the router will reboot. You'll have the latest version. Number 8, how to block MAC addresses. Regardless of your client's IP address, maybe you want to block them regardless of what they do as far as changing MAC addresses and such, and you can do that. Again, it's going to begin with IP ARP. Look in your ARP list and find the client's MAC address there. You can copy it to your clipboard, then go to IP firewall, create a new firewall rule. In this case, I put it on the forward chain. That will keep them from getting to any networks that you know how to route to. But you could also put it on the input chain to keep them from getting to your router, but you should have a firewall that already does that. So in the forward chain, you're going to go to the Advanced tab. Source MAC address is going to be the MAC address of that client. Then on the Action tab, you can put drop or reject. It's up to you. Probably drop since it's a firewall rule, and hit OK. Number 9, how to upgrade the firmware. The firmware is the bootloader that runs on RouterOS. So keeping that current ensures that you have the most stable platform possible. To upgrade the bootloader, you'll click System Router Board and Upgrade. Once you've hit that, you'll hit OK, and then you'll have to reboot the router. Now when you click System Reboot, the router will reboot, and it'll come back with the latest version of the bootloader. And finally, number 10, how to set up a wireless bridge. With 2 RouterOS devices, it's very easy to extend connectivity from one point to another, from point A to point B. This is the method you want to use when you want to tie 2 buildings together or 2 locations and you don't want to do any routing in between. To do that, you go to the wireless button on the left-hand side, then on the Security Profile tab, and you create a new security profile. This is where you're going to put in your WPA2 keys and select the ciphers and such. If you just select the defaults and put in a WPA2 shared key, you'll be in good shape. Once you've done that, you'll go over to the wireless interface, double click, go to the wireless tab, and set the things with the red arrows here. Bridge mode, that will support 1 station device. Put in the SSID and select the security profile that you just created. Then you'll create a new bridge by clicking the bridge button and the plus sign. Name it whatever you like, and then you'll add the 2 ports that you want to bridge, the Ethernet and the WLAN. On the other end of the bridge, you're going to do exactly the same thing with one caveat. You create the security profile just like you did. Then you're going to go and apply that security profile in the wireless adapter on the wireless tab. The only difference between the 2 ends is this end you'll put in station bridge mode. Make sure the band matches as well as the channel width and the security profile, and then click OK. Create the bridge, add the ports, and you're good to go. All right? I told you it'd be light. I told you it'd be quick. Any questions about any of those 10 things? Does anybody want to know about my cat? Yes, sir. We've got a cat. He's orange. What's that? No, not a maroon cat. He's orange. Gigamags. You got me, man. We're way farther down that path than I wanted to go. So, all right. Thanks a lot for your attention today. And we got over 250 people here at the MUM this year, so I'm pretty excited about it.